The purpose of this interview is to document the experience of a soldier in World War II from 1944 to 1945 in France, United States, and Great Britain. Our themes for this interview will include being drafted into service, military training in the U.S., injuries in France, Battle of the Bulge, and post-war experience. This interview is being recorded for the Veterans Oral History Project with Norman Rossignol, a former member of the United States Army. I am the interviewer. My name is Zachary Hewins. My partners in this project are Zachary Hillcamp and Sebastian Atkins. Also in the room listening to us today is journalism instructor Jeffrey Hope. Instructor Larry Ayotte is shooting a video of our interview alongside assistants Julia Steer and Jacob Richards. We are also joined by students Hannah Billings, David Furtado, Nelson Perez, Keon Butler, and Jesse Bundy. The date is April 4th, 2016. We are at the New England School of Communications at Husson University. Mr. Rossignol, thank you for doing this interview.
Thank you.
Would you please state your name, date of birth, and where you are from?
My name is Norman R Rossignol. I'm born in Old Town, Maine, the 18th of November, 1925.
Thank you very much. So, being in Old Town around World War II, what was the atmosphere like with the people?
It's hard to remember, but everything seemed to be in a turmoil, or everyone was ready to explode, it looked like, as far as I can remember. And everyone wanted to go into the service.
Now, around the time when the war started, before the U.S. had officially entered the war, what were the feelings towards the Axis powers at that time?
I don't know, mine, I was just a kid, and we didn't realize what was going on. And we knew it was going to come bad, and it did.
And what were people in Old Town doing anything to aid the war effort at the time before?
As far as I know, we had the Army Guard there, and they went into extensive training in that, and I can remember that very clearly because I had a lot of older friends that belonged to the Guard, and they were complaining about the training they were taking.
All right. And when Pearl Harbor happened, what was the overall reaction to the attack?
It's hard to explain down there. It was almost like the end of the era, because people just went to church, everyone. I'll get a little emotional, I can't help it.
That's fine.
It was quite a day. That I can remember quite well, because there was no one in town at all. Everyone filled the churches right up.
And a lot of people, when it happened, decided to enlist into the Army once war was officially declared. Were you in that boat as well, or?
About, yes. Yes, because I tried to enlist when I was 17, and this is right after Pearl Harbor, and my folks wouldn't sign the papers for me.
So how did you end up getting involved with the Army in the war?
Well, I got drafted. When I was 18, I had to register at the draft board. It took them about 3 weeks to send a letter to me that I was being drafted. And then I took my physical. I was 18 the 18th of November, and I took my physical and everything, and I think it was around the 2nd or 3rd of January, I had to report into Fort Devens.
And where's Fort Devens?
In Massachusetts.
Massachusetts. What was the reaction from your family and friends when they heard that you were being drafted into the Army?
I don't know, it was just like an everyday occurrence because it was happening to a lot of families at that time.
And when you got to Massachusetts, what was it like when you first got into the training camp?
Oh boy. I was small. I was 4'11" and didn't weigh 100 pounds. I weighed 99 pounds and something. And pass the physical, you had to weigh 100 pounds and you had to be 5 foot. Well, the height I couldn't make up, but the weight, I ate 3 bananas that morning before I went for the physical to put a little weight on, and it worked. And I passed the physical with the weight, and they gave me credit on the height because they said I'll grow.
Do you remember the first day that you got there? Did you make any friends?
No, everything was kind of rushed in that, and they kept us quite busy when we reported into Fort Devens. They gave us a bunch of shots, they checked our records and insurance and that, and they issued uniforms. Now, this is another thing. None of the uniforms fit me. The worst thing was the boots. I'll never forget that. The smallest they had in stock was 6s, and I wore a 4.5 shoe, so you can imagine. So they gave me 6 extra pair of socks that I could put 2 or 3 on to fill the boots in. And the uniforms, they were all too big, but they ended up having them all cut down to fit me.
And when you started the exercises and the training itself, what was that like? Was it kind of a shock to you getting
No. When I got drafted and went to Devens, they gave me a bunch of train tickets and told me to go to Grenada, Mississippi. And I didn't even know where Mississippi was. So they told me to go where the train tickets said, and it was quite an experience. My biggest trip in my life at that era was going to Bangor from Old Town. And I was really out of my element now. And scared, I'll tell you, I think about the scaredest I was in my life, because I had to take the train from Fort Devens to Boston, Boston to New York, New York to Washington, Washington to Memphis, Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee to Grenada, Mississippi. And they told me when I get to the Grenada to go into the train station at the information booth, and they're waiting for me. So I went and reported in, and they gave me 5 days and $150 to pay food and lodging, and told me I had 5 days to get there. And I was kind of afraid because I never traveled like that, and I never wanted to miss a train, so I never ate, never slept. I just stayed awake for 2 days, but I made it in 2 days to Grenada, Mississippi. So I reported into the station to the guy at the information, and he looked on a clipboard and found my name, and he made a phone call and says, "They're going to be after you in 2 hours." So I waited there for him, and finally a Jeep showed up with 2 soldiers in it, and they asked me who I was, and I told them. They said, "Throw your bags in the Jeep and get in." Well, that was an experience. I got educated in it real quick, like, because I found out driving back to the camp. This was about 150 miles from the camp, the train station, and they told me who they were and what was expected of me. I was sent there to replace a man that volunteered to go to Africa, and an infantry platoon is 36 men, and it's like a team. You miss one man, you don't have the good teamwork. So I was sent to these men, and I couldn't believe it. I ended up being very, very lucky, because all these men were in the service over 2 years. They were well trained in that, and I never knew nothing about the service. So the lieutenant he was in the Jeep, and the sergeant took me out for 2 weeks and trained me. They taught me how to wear the uniform, how to march, and about 5 days there, they gave me my rifle. And that was a big thing in my life. I'll never forget that day. I did a lot of hunting as a kid, and like a typical Maine boy at that time. And when they gave me that rifle, it was like getting a Cadillac. Let me tell you, I was so proud of that gun. And I mean rifle, excuse me, you don't call it a gun. And That night, from then on, the guys in the barracks started training me how to shoot that rifle. 2 or 3 hours almost every night. Dry run, practice, take it apart, put it back together again in different positions of firing. Because they was pounding in my head, their lives are going to be depending on me. I have to know how to shoot, and I have to protect them. And they, same with them, they had to know how to shoot to protect me. And there was a lot of talk going on. And I'll tell you, I didn't get too much sleep there for 2 weeks because they pounded it right into me. And after the last day of the 2 weeks on Saturday, we went to the rifle range. And all this training these guys taught me at night in the barracks paid off that morning on the rifle range. They told me I had to get 150 points out of 300. I had to get 50% of the score. So I fired that day a score I've been on the rifle range at least 50 times since then. I never came near that score. I got 293 out of 300. That means I missed the bullseye 7 times. And they were some proud of me. I had 35 cheerleaders behind me, and every time I hit a bullseye, they'd hoot and howl, and they went crazy over me. So when I finished, they carried me all the way back to the barracks, which was about 2 miles. And they couldn't get over how I did the shooting. These guys said, "You cheated," and all this, you know. But I did, because the first sergeant was marking the target, and he was quite strict on that. But anyway, after that, I fell in. I was kind of accepted with these guys. And then they started taking advanced infantry training, and that's when I got my training. I had no boot camp or basic training. The 2 weeks was my basic training. And then I fell in and took this extensive training with these men. And it was a good thing I was in good physical shape, because the training they were taking, it was unreal. And if I didn't have that training with these guys, I probably wouldn't be here today, because it was unreal. Like every morning we get up and we run. It was almost like airborne or ranger training. We ran 5 miles before breakfast every morning, and we had to do it in 2 hours. And you had to do it in 2 hours and 10 minutes anyway. And the mess sergeant closed the mess hall doors. You didn't get breakfast, so it gave you the incentive to make the hike. And then every Friday, we did 9 miles in 3 hours, and that was real strenuous. And then we went on further. This is just the hiking part. The last Friday of the month, we did 25 miles in 8 hours. And that was quite an ordeal, and it was a good thing I was in good physical shape, because the hiking and that never bothered me. And they couldn't get over it, you know, this little run, showing us all up half of the time. But the only thing that hurt me more than anything was the obstacle course. That's another thing I'll never forget. The one you have to go up over a fence, down under another one, and up over. Well, I was so short, I couldn't jump up high enough to get my hands on the top of the front thing. So my buddies used to throw me up over the top. They'd wait for me and throw me up over the top. And it was quite a teamwork. And it was kind of interesting, too, because these guys was a bunch of nuts. That's all I can say. And after that training, we got our expert infantry badge after 30 days. Oh, it went on. We had to drive all the vehicles in the infantry. And I'd never had a driver's license. Vehicles was kind of scarce in my days. And they had to show me how to drive, change tires, gas the vehicles, check the antifreeze and that. And we had to shoot all the weapons in the infantry. That was from a pistol up to a 105 howitzer. Then take them apart, repair them and that. And then the first aid, I'd say I had at least 3,000 hours of first aid training. That was one of the most important things of all this training. And then after all this training for about 4 months, it was repeated every day. And after this was over with, they had a big formation, and they gave us an expert infantry badge. That's this blue badge here with a rifle on it, the bar. That's an expert infantryman's badge. And that's something you really have to be proud of. And you notice there's a lot of stuff on this badge, and it's really 3 in 1. The wreath around it, you have to spend 30 days in combat to get the wreath. And then the star means I fought in 2 wars as an infantryman. And today there's not many of us left that's got a star. I work as a troop greeter at the airport, and some of the guys come through, they are kind of amazed. They can't believe I have a star on my combat badge. They say, "How'd you do it?" I said, "I don't know. I got it from Korea, the star." But after this training, about 5 months, we went to New York. We took a train from Mississippi up to New York. We got on the ship, and as the train pulled out onto the dock, I looked up and I said, "Holy mackerel, I'd never seen a ship so big in my life." And it was a Queen Elizabeth. And we got on that, and before the day was over with, my whole unit got on there, about 25,000 people. And the next morning we left and pulled out, and we ended up 5.5 days later in Scotland. And the ship was so big it couldn't dock at the docks there, so they came out, the local people came out, fishing boats and rowboats and some military crafts, and hauled us off the ship to shore. And then we had to walk up through town to the train. We got on the train, and when all the cars were filled up, they took off down south. Excuse me, I gotta blow my nose. So we ended up about 150 to 200 miles from London. It took us 2 days from Scotland down into England, and of course, England was being bombed pretty bad at that time, and we didn't pay much attention to it. We were more concerned of our own safety. And we stopped in a big field, and it was right next to an airport. Nothing but B-17s out there, and it was unreal. We pitched our tents, and they said, "We'll stay here." And we started having training while we were there. And the English soldiers trained us, and this was real important. They had German uniforms, and they were wearing them, so we would know what different branches of the German army they were in, and the ranks and that. And then we started shooting all our weapons that they captured in Africa and that. And so we'd be familiar with the weapons. And the object was behind that was that if your weapon broke or wasn't functioning properly, if you got your hands on one of theirs, you'd know how to use it. So that came important to some of the people. It never did me. I wasn't that unfortunate. But after this training in England, well, D-Day started after we started this training, and they gave us all kinds of ammunition, and they says that we were backup force for D-Day. In case a unit got into big-time trouble, we'd be committed. But we lucked out. It was a month before they committed us. Then we went across the channel and landed ships, and we got off walked up the beaches, and it wasn't very pretty. Walked about a mile or two inland. They had some trucks there, and we got on the trucks and rolled about another 100 miles, and they stopped. And because we knew we were close, because we could hear the artillery fire. Some of them was behind us, the longer range ones, and we knew we were right just about in the middle of it. And we got out of the trucks and started out walking down the road in the ditch on both sides of the road. And we didn't go about 15 miles or 10 miles, and the Germans hit us right off. And I had my initiation right there. And I was unfortunate at the time. I was one of the point men, and we were leading our whole outfit. And when they hit us, we didn't know much about it. There was one squad of us on one side of the road and a squad on the other, and they hit us real hard. But afterwards, we found out that the Germans knew we were coming, and we were a new outfit. And so they wanted to get some prisoners to find out what we were in that. Well, they found out the hard way. We found out 2 days later at a briefing we got that first thing, we ran out of ammo. They gave us only 5 clips apiece, and we were supposed to pick up more, but it never got to us. And we ran out of ammo, and we had to pull back. The company commander was there. He had a jeep load of ammo, so we reloaded and went back and retook the position. And it was kind of rough. I lost 3 of my buddies. And the 2 squads, we lost 3 men. 3 men were taken prisoner, and 3 were hurt real bad. So when we retook the position and that, and we captured, I think it was around 37 Germans, and there were 24 of us. And we really made it an account. And these guys were unreal. I don't know if you'd call them bloodthirsty or what, but it was the training they had in Mississippi, this advanced infantry training, that really paid off. And of course, we were new at it, and we found out at the briefing afterwards there was 300 German soldiers that hit us. And we kicked them back and took 37 prisoners, and I don't know how many are still laying there on the ground, but we never counted them, never had time to. But that was an education and a half that morning, or afternoon it was. And after that, it was just common knowledge after that. And we went kind of south, and I don't know if you gentlemen know about this submarine pens the Germans had at St. Nazaire and Lorient and Cherbourg. And we, on the peninsula, we cut them off from that, and they ended up with 2 pockets of submarines men in. Matter of fact, they held off enough. They were real good soldiers in that, the Germans there. And we couldn't wipe them out. They were good. And matter of fact, when the war ended and Germany surrendered, they surrendered 24 hours after Germany did. That's how strong they were. And those sub-pens were something else. I was in a certain position one time for a day or 2, and we were right on the coast, and we could see the sub-pens where we were. And the British would come by, and they'd be going back to England to reload the ships and that, and they'd fire their cannons just to get rid of the excess armament they had. And they'd hit these sub-pens. We were watching in binoculars, and all it was doing, they weren't hurting the sub-pens. All they were doing was scratching the camouflage on it. They were well built. But before this happened, I read afterwards a British commando outfit pulled a big raid on there because of the sub-pen at St. Nazaire, Lorient was a deep water one, and it was the only dry dock on that coast that would handle that, the Bismarck, I think it was. So they pulled a commando raid and ruined the dry docks there. But we didn't know about it till about, well, the war was over with when we found out about it. And then we stayed there for a while, and they knew something was happening up north, and they were running kind of short of people, and they pulled us off, and another unit relieved us. And we rode the trains for about a day and got out, and just about that time the bulge started. And we knew where we were going, We went right up into the Ardennes. We got off the train and they took us by truck a ways, and then we got off and walked, and it was just like walking off a frying pan into the fire. It was unreal, and it was a good thing we knew a little bit about combat that we were at. And the unit I was in was the only unit that never pulled back on the Bulge. We held in that. And after the Bulge was over with, my unit, the 94th Infantry Division, we led the whole Third Army. We were the spearhead outfit to the Rhine River. And I don't know if you call it an honor or not, but the guys thought it was. They were kind of gung-ho. And we hit the Rhine River and up near Ludwigshafen, and they issued us gas masks in that because they knew Ludwigshafen was the big chemical city for the German army. They had all kinds of poisonous gas and that stored there. And we cleaned the city out to the river, and all of a sudden they hauled us right off the line, gave us a good meal, and took a shower, about a day and a half rest, put us on trucks and brought us down, and we went into what they call the Ruhr pocket, Dusseldorf. And they needed help to close that pocket with the Germans, and we were the outfit that got into the city of Dusseldorf. And then after that was over with, we went back into combat and joined the regular army, and we fought all the way into Czechoslovakia. We were in about 300 miles in Czechoslovakia when they stopped us, and they says, we got to wait because we're under, we've met our military objective, and we couldn't go any further. We had to wait for the Russians, and we had to wait about 5 days for them to come down into us. And we knew it was getting close, you could tell. And all of a sudden, one of the Czech farmers come running up to us and pointed down in the woods, and he says, Nemetsky, Nemetsky. And we knew what he meant. And he pointed into the woods. We went down there, and we got about 50 prisoners. They were German soldiers, and they had a full-bird colonel with them. And he spoke perfect English, by the way. And he didn't know they reached the American lines. And he surrendered to us and laid all our weapons down. And they were kind of happy. What they were doing was they were trying to get away from the Russians because they knew the Russians maltreated their prisoners. So they knew they were close to the Americans, but they didn't know we were there. They were kind of happy. And matter of fact, this is the first bunch of Germans we captured I've ever seen that was happy to be captured. Yeah, I guess they were thanking God we weren't Russians. Anyway, the war ended about a week after that or so, and we hung around there for about 3 months in Czechoslovakia, which is nice. The Czech people were fantastic. And I've been back there once. We were in a little village outside of a little town called Budějovice. There's Budweiser. And the Russian soldiers that come in there, they were real friendly with us. And we had to pull roadblock duty, and 500 yards down the road, they had to pull roadblock duty. So instead of them putting 2 men on and us putting 2 men on, we consolidated together because they were great, the combat Russians. And we used to take, cigarettes were worth a mint at that time. And a Czech farmer would get his hay rack and horses, and one of us and a Russian soldier, we'd go up into Budějovice, and believe it or not, with a carton of cigarettes, we'd get 4 or 5 kegs of beer, and we'd bring it back, and we'd party. And that was a good deal. But this only lasted about a month or so, and they relieved the Russians. And this other outfit come in, and They were little hardliners. We didn't have nothing to do with them. We had problems from the first day they moved in there, and we made them move back down the road because they were no good. We didn't like them, and they didn't like us. So we stayed there probably another month, and I enlisted in the Army from being a draftee, and I went home. The main reason why is I wanted to get home for Christmas. And this was in November, and I made it all the way back. And I got home for Christmas. And after I had 90 days furlough. And after the 3 months was over with, I reported back to Fort Devens. And they took me right down to the Navy Station, Boston Naval Station, put me on another ship, right back to Germany again. Well, I didn't like that too much. But I had some good duty over there. We landed in Bremerhaven, and I worked in the railroad police a while, and then moved from the Bremerhaven to Nuremberg to the headquarters of the railroad police and the headquarters of everything else that was going on. And I stayed there for about 2 years. And then the unit broke up, and I got shipped out to Austria, and to Vienna, Austria. And that was quite a city. It was unreal. And I was in an honor guard outfit for a while there. And then after that, that unit broke up, and we moved to Salzburg. And a year later, the Korean War started, and I got shipped back to the States because I had too much duty in Europe. I kept extending my leave time over there. You were only supposed to stay there X amount of months. Well, I overran it. I volunteered to stay longer because I had good duty and nice places, especially Salzburg. I like Salzburg. I skied. And you're right in the middle of the mountains, and Salzburg is about 45, 50 miles from Berchtesgaden. And every day I had off, I used to take the bus. We had a shuttle bus from Salzburg to Berchtesgaden. I'd go to Berchtesgaden and ski, and that. It was unreal. It was like a big vacation, except for our regular training we had to go through. But otherwise, it was nice. And then when the Korean War started, they shipped me back to the States, and I stayed in the States for 6 months, and then they shipped me out to Korea. And in the meantime, because I cross-trained into different things in the service, I was interested in radios and that, and I became a radio operator, radio teletype, Morse code, and a radio chief. And then I became a communications specialist. And when I went to Japan to go to Korea, I was going as a communications specialist. They had a point system. You had to have 36 points in Korea to rotate to come back home. And the point system worked like if you were in combat or the front lines, you'd get 4 points a month. Back a little, 3 points. Back a little more, 2 points. Way back, 1 point. And I was going to a 1 point zone, so that made me to stay in Korea for 3 years. And I said, no way. I pulled my combat badge on them, and that's a preference you have. Anytime you want to, if you've got ex-combat infantrymen, you want to return to the infantry, you can go. I don't know if it's an honor or what, but at least I pulled my badge on them and went to Korea as an infantryman. Well, it paid off. It was a gamble. And I didn't make it 9 months, but it took me 10.5 months to get my 36 points. So it worked. For me, anyway. And we came home. And the ride home was really something. We left Pusan, went down through the China Sea by the Philippines and around Cambodia and part of the Indian Ocean, and we stopped in Colombo, India. Let a bunch of Indian troops off from Korea. And then we went across to Ethiopia, and we had a bunch of Ethiopian soldiers. We dropped them off at Djibouti, then went up through the Red Sea, the Suez Canal, to Izmir, Turkey, lit a bunch of Turk soldiers off. Then we went to Athens, Greece, lit a bunch of Greek soldiers off. This is like a shuttle bus. And we went to Marseille, France, let a bunch of French soldiers off, and then went through the part of the Mediterranean into the Atlantic Ocean to New York. And my big disappointment of the whole thing was I took a lot of slides that era, and I wanted to get a picture of the Rock of Gibraltar, and I'm still upset over it. We went by it at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I never did get a picture of the Rock of Gibraltar.
So, I have here that you were injured
Yes.
in World War II. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this happened down near the sub pens. I could speak a little French, by the way, being from Old Town. And in France, the lieutenant and sergeant come up to me. They were a little gung-ho. They had a couple of French soldiers, guerrilla forces, FFE they call them. And they were talking, and they brought them up to me. They knew I could talk a little French, so I had them talk slow so I could understand what they were saying, because their French and our French, Canadian French, is a little bit different, similar as our English and the British English. It was similar to that, you know. So if they spoke slowly, I could understand what they were saying. Well, they knew where a bunch of Krauts was hiding out. So the sergeant and lieutenant wanted to go get them, so I went with them. And of course, the 3 Frenchmen that they had with them, 2 of them were leading it, 1 was bringing up the rear, and we got about a mile or so away from the front lines and that. And one of the Frenchmen tripped a mine, and it was a booby trap, I guess. And the 2 of them in front of me got killed instantly, and I was the 3rd person in line. And I was lucky. I only got minor injuries, and then my sergeant was behind me. He had his leg cut off and a bunch of other injuries, and the lieutenant was behind him, and he got hurt quite bad, and then the Frenchman and back. And I was the only one able to move, and I administered first aid to him and did what I could. And then I ran off and found help. I went back to our lines and got help, and I showed them how to get back and that, and they carried him out. And the sergeant died on the way to the hospital. I was kind of upset over that. And I got 2 of my medals that day, my Bronze Star and Purple Heart. By the way, in my bag I have the citation that was written up in the Bangor Daily News in 1945. I'll show it to you guys afterwards.
And so, around the time of your injury, were you hospitalized, or did you just
Yeah,
patched up?
for 3 weeks. Yeah, and I reported back to the unit, and that was funny at that time. Usually they don't send you back to the unit, but if you under 30 days, they'll let you go back. Regulations. So I went back to my unit. My captain said to me, he says, you help the cooks. You're not in physical shape yet. So I helped the cooks, and I can tell you one thing, we had the best cooks in the Army. They, at night, they'd make sandwiches and coffee, and we'd sneak up to the front lines and give the guys coffee and sandwiches and that. And we lost 3 cooks on account of that. They got caught bringing up sandwiches or coffee to the guys and that. But they had the respect from the company for what they were doing. Well, with my minor injuries and that, I couldn't get around too good, so I used to go with them, kind of escort them in that. And I did that for a couple of weeks. Then I told the captain I wanted to go back to my platoon and squad, and he says, okay, and he let me go. And he says, his favorite saying with me was, I was the youngest man in the outfit, because all these guys when I joined him was 25, 26 years old. And every time he saw me, he says, Rossignol, go shave. You haven't shaved today, I can tell that. Well, I never did shave for a year. Matter of fact, when I left Czechoslovakia to come home, he came down to the train station and he says, don't forget to shave in the morning. That was his goodbye.
So you mentioned earlier that you're a troop greeter now.
Yes.
And so when you greet the men and women who come home from modern day conflicts, is there any sort of feeling that, or lessons or anything that you give to the modern day troops from your time during World War II?
No, not too much. Except I had one incident. I had a colored boy was injured over in Afghanistan, and his sergeant asked me to go talk to him because they knew I was injured, and he said he had problems with him. So I talked to the kid, and he couldn't get over. He was in a Humvee, and he was the only one that survived. And he had minor injuries, and he couldn't get over it. He says he was having bad dreams and all that stuff, you know. So him and I went into a little conference, and I told him, I says, you'll have those the rest of your life. I says, I still have mine. And then kind of straightened him out a little bit. And he thanked me. We talked for about an hour. And that was one of the good things. Another good thing, being a troop greeter, excuse me, I hate to brag about this, but I was Poloquin's guest for the State of the Union in January. And he was taking me through the tunnels in the Capitol, and this big colored guy, oh, he must have weighed 250. I got pictures of it. He broke ranks. He was the security guard. He come over and he grabbed me by both shoulders, picked me right up off the ground. And he says, Mister, he says, I never thought I'd see you again. When did we meet? He says, I was come through the Bangor Airport, and you were the first American to shake my hands when I came home from Afghanistan. And that was 5 years ago, and he remembered me.
Sounds like a lot of good feelings come from that.
Yeah.
So you have a couple of medals here. Can you explain what some of them are?
Well, my Bronze Star, it has a V on it. That's for valor. And there's a little oak leaf on it. That means I received that medal twice. And this, my Purple Heart. This is the Army Commendation Medal. I was a communications specialist in, excuse me, in '62. They were having the atomic testing in the Pacific. And this two-star general needed a code expert. I was a cryptologist at that time. And I went with him to Christmas Island when they were having the atomic testing. And that was a nice deal. For 6 months, I worked for him. And when I left him to come home, he gave me this medal for a job well done. It's the Army Commendation Medal. But my pride and glory is this one. That's the Army Good Conduct Medal. It takes 3 years to get this medal. And there's 5 knots on there, and that's how many more times I received that medal. And this is the European Theater Medal, and there's 4 stars on it. That means I was in 4 major battles in Europe. And they had a regulation. You had to spend 30 days in that area to get the star. And there's 5 stars for Europe. Well, the reason why I didn't get the 5th star, I was in the hospital for 18 days, and they gypped me out of it. This one here, I want to thank you people for this medal. I got from Governor Baldacci, that's a Silver Star Meritorious Service Medal for my military service, and from the people of the state of Maine. This one here is the World War II Victory Medal for help winning the war. This is the Army of Occupation in Germany after the war was over with. This one here is the National Defense Medal. It wasn't the Cold War, but it was similar to it. And I was stationed in the anti-aircraft in Boston as a communications specialist. And the star means I was on active duty because we had a lot of reserve and National Guard men with us to fill the unit up. And this one here is the United Nations Medal from Korea, because we had troops from a lot of foreign countries like Turkey, Greece, France, England, India. And this is the Service Medal from Korea with 2 stars on it. That means I was in 2 major battles in Korea. This one here, at the 50th anniversary, I got this from the country of Korea, thanking me for my service, and an application to go back free to Korea. I'm waiting for them, because I've known guys that's gone there for a week, and they said it was fantastic. And this one here is the Cold War Medal. That's when I was in Germany when the Berlin Wall went up and all that stuff.
All right. So you seem to have a lot of interesting relics from your time in service.
Some of them I have nice certificates that go with them.
All right. So what are your thoughts about military service in the time you served overall?
I enjoyed it, because I don't know why, but I would have stayed in. But Vietnam started, and I told the wife, I says, boy, my luck is running out. I says, I'm not, after Korea, World War II, I says, I'm not going to Vietnam. So I retired and came home.
And what are your thoughts about military service now?
Now, it's unreal, really, because the communications, the food, and the uniforms and that is so different and so much better than what we had. Like during the Battle of the Bulge, all we had was combat boots, and by the way, we did have long johns, but just regular uniforms, and it was cold. And they said Korea was cold. I spent 2 winters in Korea. I wasn't as cold as I was in the Battle of the Bulge, because we didn't have the clothes.
And how would you describe life lessons that you learned in the military?
Quite a bit. It made me value life, and I'm still quite active with the people around here. I work at Cole's Museum as student interviewers. They interview veterans, and I do that. And he gives scholarship awards because some of the students can write out what they think of Americanism, and they're honored every year, a bunch of them. First, second, and third place. And I guess it's $700, $500, and $300 awards they get from Cole's Museum, the students. And by the way, I've had 3 students get the first award. And I belong to the Purple Heart organization. We're disbanded now, but we still are kind of honored. 3 weeks ago, I was requested to go to Old Town to pin the Purple Heart Notorious Americanism Award to a ROTC student. And Saturday night, I did it here in Bangor again. And the commander of the ROTC in Orono at the university, he was there at both places. So he took my name and address, and he says, I'm going to call you. Would you come and do the same thing up at the university? So I'm quite honored. And then this deal with Poloquin at the State of the Union, it was quite an honor, because I found out afterwards he has only 1 guest to go to that, and his crew picked me, his advisors that he has working with him. And I talked to some of them. They're real nice people. And when he had one, he asked them, you know, which one of you guys want to go? They said, we don't, but you pick Norman. We want him. So I had 3 days in D.C. as a Poloquins guest. Matter of fact, he's still after me. I had to go to a political meeting he was at, and he had me lead the Pledge of Allegiance. And the 22nd, they having a big political meeting in Cross Auditorium. And I've got to do the same thing there. He's already called me and informed me to be there. But it's nice. And I've got to meet a lot of nice people.
It sounds like a lot of interesting times you had.
Yes.
So would you recommend someone consider the military service today?
I hate to say this, yes, because from what I've been retired from the Army like 52 years, and I wouldn't be able to live like I am living today if I didn't go there. And I worked at the university for 25 years, and I'm getting their retirement, plus Social Security, plus my military. And I'm not rich, but I'm comfortable. And I can do what I want to do. And it paid off. And my advice is to the younger generation, they're really cutting their nose off to spite their face if they don't join the reserves or the guards. It's 1 weekend a month, you know, of that. But when you get the age of 60, you get 20 years in, you get a retirement. And that's quite a shot in the arm, plus your Social Security. And if you're fortunate enough to work in a place that has a retirement, that's an added bonus. And the medical part of it is unreal. And I think a lot of people don't realize this, what they're missing. And it's a little hardship, yes. But in the long run, when you get up to, not my age, but over retirement age, it comes real in handy. Because I can travel like now, almost any place I want. I can catch a plane here from Bangor, the air refueler, and go to Spain. And then take a train and go anywhere. But the air flight's not going to cost me a cent. I can go with space available. Now I want to come home, I can do it just vice versa. Or go to Hawaii, Japan. The benefits you get is unreal. But the best thing is the medical. I'll tell you that now. The medical outgoes the money you get as a retired, because I've been through it. My wife had a bad heart attack. She had 2 bouts with cancer. I had 2 bouts with cancer, and it would have cost me a fortune, just the hospitalization. But it's never cost me a cent. And I get my medicine free all the time, as long as it's generic. I have to pay the difference between generic and the full price. And it's unreal.
Well, sounds like a lot of good benefits there.
Oh, yes. It's benefits you never know. Matter of fact, I didn't even realize the benefits I was going to get when I retired. But it's really paid off.
So before we conclude, is there anything else you would like to say?
The big thing is, I love this country.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your service, and thank you for doing this project with us.
Thank you.